Brilliant. So we are there. We're live on the Ethical Hour page. We're here on Zoom. This is all very technical and wonderful. So welcome everybody to the launch of Legacy, the Sustainable Development Goals in Action.
Yeah, welcome.
Very exciting. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Legacy, and then we're going to jump into our panel discussion. But I'm just going to ask our lovely panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a bit about the work that they do in relation to the Sustainable Development Goals. So Colin, I'm going to come to you first. You're from Support the Goals, so tell us a little bit about what Support the Goals is all about.
Very much, Sean, and hello to everybody out there on Facebook and on Zoom as well. I'm from the northwest of England, and I'm going to apologise first of all that I've got a slightly iffy broadband, so if I wander in and out, it's not you, it's me. And also I'm working at home with lots of animals in the back garden, so if you hear a cockerel crowing every now and again, I really apologise, he's a little bit noisy out there.
No worries.
Tiny bit of background on myself. I spent 20 years not in sustainability, but actually in the technology industry, working for a company called NTT, who were headquartered in Japan that nobody's ever heard of, but they're about the 25th biggest company in the world and one of the largest tech companies in the world. For a Japanese company, and I worked for a South African subsidiary of that company. Was quite interesting. So I was in the tech sector for many years and spent 5 years being their global head of sustainability, that was kind of interesting. You learn an awful lot about how big companies deal with these things. Back in 2016, I set up and started in business myself with the aim of helping businesses specifically understand what sustainability was. But that was the time the SDGs came out, or sorry, the global goals. I hate the term SDGs. It sounds like something you should see a doctor about.
God.
So, but it's, I found that actually it was a really easy way to go and explain to people what it was we're trying to go and do. It was a nice, simple framework. So entirely about trying to explain to people why the Sustainable Development Goals are important and how to actually go and support them. Support the Goals in particular is an initiative I run, and its aim is just to go and share the stories and the journeys of industry leaders, so the big companies, innovators, the small cool companies like the ones we've got here today, and just everyday businesses and what they're doing on the goals. So it's a kind of virtual place and occasionally a physical place in the north of England, but mainly a virtual place where everyone can get together and understand what businesses are doing around the goals.
Brilliant. Thank you, Colin. And I'm just popping in the chat, if you're on Zoom, I'm popping a link to Support the Goals there. And if you are watching on Facebook, I'm popping it there as well, so you can see the work that Colin does. Nice to have you here, Colin. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We look forward to hearing from some of your animals as well.
Yeah.
Cool, good fun. Elle, I'm going to come to you next. Elle is joining us from Kogo. So tell us all about Kogo, Elle.
Hi all, thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be here. So yeah, I am part of the team at Kogo, an app that connects consumers with businesses who are driving for change. So we launched in London back in December, and we have numerous businesses that are mapped out via the Sustainability Development Goals, which is part of our accreditation system. So you as a consumer can log onto our app and select issues that you care about most, because we really understand sustainability is something that is really personal to every individual. You may care about cruelty-free, you may be interested in living wage, workers' rights. It's widely encompassing, and we use a sustainable development goals, to map all that out. So you can log in and essentially have your morning coffee from a business that you know is driving for good to finding an insurer. And the idea is that you vote with every pound that you spend. So yeah, it's a really exciting time for us. We're continuing to grow. We're going nationwide shortly, which we're really excited about because we're just in London at the moment. So yeah, really pleased to be here.
Brilliant. Thanks, Elle. I can't wait for it to roll out. So I actually interviewed Ben, the founder of Kogo, on the Ethical Hour podcast. Afterwards, I will share the link to that if anyone wants to go and find out more about how they're really using the voice of the consumer at a bigger level to push for change. It is brilliant. I love your model. I think it's so clever, and I can't wait for it to roll out nationally so I can get my hands on it and start using it as well. So
good to hear. We're very excited too. We'll keep everybody updated. We can't wait.
Yeah, please do. It's great to have you here. Thanks, Elle. And Natalie, my fellow legacy author, tell us about the work that you do.
Oh, hi everybody. Again, absolutely delighted to be in such great company and to have people here interested in getting closer to our global goals. And I've probably had about 3 careers actually bringing me to here. So if we look at the future of work and being able to be agile, if you like, I kind of embody that. So I started my career working in mergers and acquisitions finance, worked for a lot of the big companies, went all around the world doing that. And in 2008, at the height of the credit crunch, I was pregnant with my daughter, myself, my husband and his best mate, started the UK's first dental network inside of Sainsbury's and Tesco's. We spent a few years building that. My role mostly sort of strategy and looking at finances, if you like, also raising my daughter. But at that time, I also did a second degree. I did a degree in interior architecture, and we really focused on retrofit of sustainable technologies on heritage buildings. So then I got the bug. I got the design bug, I got the tech bug, and I got the sustainability bug at that point. Well, we sold that business to Bupa Healthcare in 2013, and I didn't know what I wanted to do really, so I kind of came back into finance, and I tried to be an employee again for a couple of years, and that was interesting because once you've done it for yourself, it's or you've been out of that larger corporate, it's really hard to go back into those sort of very formal, slow processes. But the last job I had was at Siemens, and I was heading up food and beverage finance division, working with a multidisciplinary tech team to help that industry to digitalize. And what I really noticed was there was 2 things. Firstly, what looks like on the inside of these big companies, actually they're not as innovative as you think. So there's a small part of it which is developing a really great technology, and the rest of them are working in very traditional large corporate way. So it was quite slow again. But the other thing I noticed was there was really no women, and certainly anybody else of any, diversity in these tech teams, developing the teams. And so I got really interested in it, and I went away and I did some research and wrote a white paper on women and the future of women in work and digital divide, and then just got really passionate about trying to go out. So I left in December and I started the Hero Works, and we are, I guess, a group of design thinkers and digital tech consultants who are helping frontline staff to upskill, but at the same time drive innovation of new digital software. But at the heart of that, they're all underpinned by a UN sustainable goal. So that's me, yes.
Brilliant. And we will tell you more about Legacy, but Natalie has contributed one of the chapters to Legacy as well. So I'm going to tell a little bit about me and the book and the project, and then I'll get you to tell us about your chapter, Natalie.
Yes.
Builds on all of those themes. But I think what is so interesting is that all our panelists have come from completely different backgrounds and experience and areas in the world that they've been working, and have really seen that these goals are global and they are addressing the biggest challenges that we've got. So it's fantastic, and I think we're going to have a really interesting discussion, so welcome everybody. So for our attendees, if you haven't met me before, my name is Sian, and I'm the founder of Ethical Hour, which is the world's first and largest network online for people who want to live and work more ethically. I actually started in corporate as well. I was head of marketing at a cybersecurity firm, so also in the tech space, looking at selling software that helps big organizations to secure their networks and stay secure. But what happened was I went traveling, and like many people did, suddenly realized that actually I wanted to start living a bit more ethically and sustainably during that experience, and started to think about the impact that my decisions were having on the planet and on people in supply chains, and just kind of starting to think about my own, what we usually call footprint, really. And being in marketing and being on social media and doing all the digital things all the time, I decided that to keep myself accountable on that journey, I was going to start a blog. So I started blogging about the things I was doing to reduce plastic and to give up fast fashion and various different moves into the ethical living space, and decided that I wanted to connect with more people in that space and learn from them, but also share what I was learning and just support each other. Because when you start ethical and sustainable living, your family and friends don't always understand it. They don't always know why you're doing it. They don't always kind of know how to support you in that, and support helps you kind of carry on with it, really. So I started a Twitter chat, Ethical Hour. We still meet every Monday, 8 p.m, using the hashtag Ethical Hour on Twitter. And what I realised during that time was that I was connecting with a lot of small businesses who had so much purpose to their work. You know, they were similar to me. They'd been inspired by travelling, or they'd met groups of artisans or producers that they could help. They had beautiful products with amazing impact stories, but they didn't really know how to market themselves and how to get out there and how to combat some of the objections that we see around ethical products, in that they're usually more expensive, they're usually a little less convenient, those kind of things. So they didn't know how to tell that story. And being in marketing, I realized that that's where I could help them. So I left the corporate world a couple of years ago now to start Ethical Hour full time. And we now have a membership community where ethical businesses, small businesses in the ethical space, can come and learn how to market themselves. They can connect with fellow change makers, and they can get really tailored support for an affordable amount each month as a subscription. And I also do consultancy and coaching with ethical businesses as well. So that's Ethical Hour in a nutshell. And how we came to be involved in the Legacy Project, this was actually organised by B1G1, who are a not-for-profit organisation. And their ethos, they've got a really fantastic founder's story, so I really recommend looking them up if you're interested in giving back and making a positive impact. But their ethos is based on the idea that what if for every single transaction in the world there was some sort of element of giving back? So when you buy your coffee in the morning, what if that provided clean water for somebody in a developing country that really needed that? What if when you bought some stationery in the shop, that gave some school books to some children in a developing country that need that? And how could we start supporting the global goals, and how could we start tackling these problems through the small everyday things that we're already doing? And that would have a compound effect if we were all doing it. So Natalie actually introduced me to B1G1, and I went up to Manchester in December and just loved what they were about and signed us up. So for Ethical Hour now, every transaction in our business gives back to various different causes aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals. We're going to do some giving for everybody that's here today watching us live on various platforms. So we're going to make some impacts, and we also do it for things like when you join our newsletter, we give back as well, because it's actually so easy to do once you start making a positive impact, once you start embedding these goals in the work that you're doing. So I'm hoping that today we're going to learn a bit more about other ways that that can be done. We're going to hear from our panelists about their experience. And of course, you can learn more inside the Legacy book as well, because this is 52 change makers from around the world that have come together to tell their stories of how they're making a difference. What I love about it is it's kind of everyday stories, it's everyday businesses, and it just really is inspiring. So Natalie, I'm going to unmute you and ask you to tell us a little bit about your chapter and the story that you tell inside Legacy, so people can really get a feel for what this book is all about.
Sure. Well, I think for me, so I wrote about SDG number 9, and that's about sustainable industrialization and innovation. And I think for me, there were two things that really kind of came out going through this sort of writing journey, is that the circular economy, if you embed those kind of that ethos in your business, kind of in your business mind, that just even if you're not interested in the UN global goals, even just having that mindset, you will have a sustainable business. So actually, just as a framework for business, whether you want to be changing the world or not, is just a really great framework for driving sustainable innovation. And the other thing was, because I'm really interested in diversity, we, just by going through this sort of research process, finding that diversity is the engine of innovation as well. So just two of those main things: looking at reducing inequality by increasing diversity and inclusion, and putting sustainability at the heart of what you do, just in your business anyway, gives you a better business. And I thought there's a stat that says there's a 12 trillion per annum additional GDP per year. So that's incredible if we all reached this. So that is, I think it equates to something like 380 million jobs. So, you know, it's just good for the economy as well. So for me, that was kind of it. Coming from a business background, was whether or not you want to change the world or not, you know, this is just great for business. So, you know, the tips and the tricks, I guess, or the practical advice that we give in these books from lots of different perspectives and industries, etc., will just help you, you know, create a better business.
Yeah, there is such a compelling case if you look into the stats about why we need to achieve the goals. So there's obviously the economic opportunities that it creates, but also if you look at the global risk register, I think it's like the top 5 global risks actually directly correlate with the global goals. And we all know you can't run a business in a risky environment, and with the changes that are going to come from climate change and the instability around that, actually there is a really compelling case for businesses to be getting involved and helping solve these problems and achieve this better future. So Colin, you're doing a lot of work to try and get bigger businesses involved through Support the Goals and the kind of analysis work you've done of FTSE 250 companies against the goals and their progress. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that and kind of how you're trying to bring big corporates into this space?
As soon as I can actually find the unmute button, I'll do exactly that. Yeah. No, thanks, Sean. That's a good question. It kind of fascinates me because, I mean, I started off my career originally working in a small business, but I spent a lot of my career working in some pretty big companies. So I've kind of got to understand the way both of them think. And I say both of them, I mean, businesses don't think at all. I mean, businesses don't exist. I always hear about why should a business care about sustainable development goals? They don't. Businesses are just a bunch of people. People care about these things, you know, but a business is a legal entity and a set of aims that people have got. And the aims of those big businesses are generally the same, but you find that people have got their own little silos within that company. They've got their own little roles. They've got to focus maybe on a narrower area in a big company that they might not have in a small business. So in terms of driving change, it's often actually understanding what they're doing. But fundamentally, a couple of things that businesses all like are publicity. Everyone likes a good story about them. And the one thing they do get is competition. So I found universally, you know, if you can actually start talking to businesses about whether they're small or whether they're large, about how can you actually boost the image of your business? How can you do things that are good to increase your publicity? They respond. Particularly in the large companies, if you're dealing with a marketing department or an HR department or a communications department, even investor relations, this kind of thing, that makes a difference too. And the competition side of it, that's hilarious. I mean, that's great to go and see. We launched a rating scheme on Support the Goals, and what we did was we researched the FTSE 100, so the 100 largest companies in the UK, the FTSE 250, the next largest 250 companies in the UK. We also researched the Australian ASX 100 just for a bit of international colour. And we've got a whole load of kind of voluntary businesses added on there as well. And we've got a very objective rating scheme that looks to have they publicly made plans, commitments, taking action and reporting progress against the goals. And for each of those, they get a star. And on that competition angle, what I find fascinating is the minute you show that rating to a company, if they got 3 stars out of 4, they never question what the stars are for. The first thing they say is, how do I get a 4th star? Yeah. Or the other question they ask is, what's my competitor got? Am I better than them or am I not better than them? So that kind of friendly competition is a great way just to go and drive a little bit of progress between them. And, you know, hence why we research the big companies first of all, because truthfully, they're going to have a bit of a trickle effect, you know, if the big companies are doing things. Sadly, just on those figures, the FTSE 100 are doing some pretty good things. There's a definitive journey. There is over half of them speaking about the goals and putting it in their public reporting. The FTSE 250, it might be difficult for you to go and guess what percentage of the FTSE 250 actually have reporting their plans, commitments, actions, and progress against the goals, but it's 0%. One company out of 250, which is rounds down to 0, Investec, who are actually South African, are the only ones doing all of that. So now all the companies I speak to, the bulk of them haven't heard of the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's why webinars like are so important, because our biggest issue is just how do we get people to have heard of these things in the first place?
Colin, that really resonates with me. And I think one of the other things that kind of fits into that competition and being unique, etc., and just thriving in the digital economy is that we're incredibly tight for talent across the globe. And one of the things now, we're looking at the millennials and the Gen Zs coming through. They really they're really interested in working for businesses who have a purpose at the core of, who are looking at it from a quadruple bottom line basis of people, planet, and profits. And those businesses who aren't interested in really, and not just in the same ways they used to do kind of a little bit of greenwashing, who really put purpose at the heart of what they're doing, will be the ones who attract and retain the top talent. So, I think it knocks on to so many of the critical drivers of business.
Absolutely right. And I've never yet met a single person who doesn't think this is a great thing to go and do in business. It's first of all understanding it, and then secondly, okay, how do I go and do this? And that's what I've tried to go and help with.
And Elle, you at Kogo have a really interesting way into helping businesses understand this through actually the spending data of what consumers are after. Because what we see a lot is that, there's research, there's surveys done that say people want to spend money with businesses that are doing social and environmental good. They don't want to spend money with businesses that are damaging the planet, but we've still got that attitude behavior gap. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how you're kind of bridging that gap and making that business case to these companies through the kind of information on where customers are actually spending?
Completely. And Colin, what you were saying was so interesting in terms of businesses and awareness, and something that is what we really try to push is, sustainability isn't this moment in time or kind of PR trend to jump on. It's here to stay. There's no opting in or opting out. And, in the last year, the press that we've seen about plastics, the Evening Standard's campaign to remove straws in restaurants in London, businesses are really starting to switch on, right? But they're focusing on certain things. And don't get me wrong, that is a great start, focusing on reducing waste and so on, but it's really working with these businesses to understand, sustainability and ethics as widely encompassing. It goes down to their product, but it also goes down to how they're working within their organizations. And that's why we've got 12 badges that map out everything from living wage accreditation to cruelty-free products, carbon emissions, reducing waste. So we're really working with businesses to really inspire them to tell their story and work towards getting more badges, because we really want to understand sustainability is something that's always evolving. You may start with one badge, but that's a start. Be transparent as a business in terms of what you're doing. And that's a big apprehension from a lot of the larger businesses we're working with. They know what they need to do. They know they need to work towards sustainability, but they feel they're not ready to kind of tell their story. And we really try and encourage and say, there's no time to kind of be working on your fancy PR plan or your marketing plan, talk about sustainability, tell it how it is now, and we will work with you to, get those further badges. And in terms of getting those further badges and their focus, our data via our users on the app, using their card, but also selecting issues that they care about, is then translated to those businesses so they can really focus and see directly, okay, I hear about plastics happening in the press right now, which is of course important, but what else do users actually really care about? Oh, living wage, of course, that makes complete sense. We're probably already doing that anyway, or can get to that goal. We work with businesses on that reporting as well. So it's constantly evolving.
I think what's really clever is that you can make that case. So you can go to a local supermarket and say, and this will really come into play when it's rolled out, but from what I understand from what Ben explained to me on the podcast, is you could go and say to them, look, 50% of people in your local area really care about your products being palm oil free or plastic free or whatever. And actually some of these issues are so complex. And when we look at the goals in as the diagram, although it's beautiful and although they're laid out and they've got nice, easy to understand titles like zero poverty and no hunger and things, that can feel very overwhelming. And you can see how the business, big or small, they're looking at this saying, where do I even start? What is my way in? What do I do? So actually being able to say, your customers care about this, start there, I think is really important. And then we see these goals have a knock-on effect, because once you start, you know, if you start paying living wage, you're having an effect on poverty, you're having an effect on other issues as well. So it kind of starts to lift and starts to create that movement. I think that's really smart.
I love that it's non-judgmental as well, Elle. So it's sort of saying, you know, the next best time to start is now. Just get out there, and even if you're, you know, if you don't feel you're doing enough, it doesn't matter. Just do something and start now, and then, you know, in a year's time, where will you be? But I think that kind of showing willing brings the public, whether that be a consumer or somebody looking for a job or talent, etc., sort of makes you think, well, yeah, you know, they're trying. Maybe I can go and help to make a difference there. Maybe I can help them expedite that journey. So yeah, I think doing nothing is not an option now.
Completely. And we also, on our app, when you go and look at businesses, so you can see what badges they've been awarded, but you can also see their pledge as well, what they're working towards for the future to get that next badge. So it's that constant engagement and constant conversation. And that's for all business, even some of the ones who we think are, you know, most sustainable. There's always something that they can be improving on, whether that's, you know, making sure all their staff in their kind of delivery sector are paid the living wage. It's widely encompassing. So yeah.
Wow. Well, I'd love to introduce her. I'm a member of an entrepreneurial community called Dent, and they're an Australian, I guess, founded company. But at the heart of everything that they do, each one of their members pledges towards an SDG. And I think you'll have about 10,000 businesses across the world who would love to be part of that. So when you get launching, so yeah, I think we're really on the cusp of something here, and people reaching out to do this and sharing all of our work together is the way we'll make this happen a bit quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. Ties into goal number 17, collaboration for
yeah, it does.
So how can we achieve more of that? Because I really feel, so inside the Ethical Hour community, we've done a Goals for Change campaign this month, and we've been talking about the goals, we've been digging into what they mean, people have been doing video interviews with each other, and like, I feel collectively our awareness of the goals has risen up, even though we were all kind of working towards them anyway.
Yeah.
So what is happening is there's a lot, big and small businesses are working towards these and are doing this. But in the small business community in particular, what I come across a lot with really small businesses and you know, one man woman bands and micro businesses is that they think this isn't for me. They think this is policy, or this is for big corporates. And actually, you know, small businesses make up 90% of our economy. So how can we raise that engagement level, and how can we encourage small businesses to get involved and to take that first step that we've just been talking about?
Yeah. I think for me, I don't know if everybody's read the Simon Sinek Find Your Why. This for me is the guiding light in what we do. So actually peeling back to find something that is your purpose, finding and aligning your own purpose to this gives you strength, and I guess collective strength to navigate your business through really choppy, changey seas actually, and just having that kind of lighthouse out there. So helping people to just, I guess, connect their why with one of those is one way they can start. It's just looking personally, what do I care about? Why did I start this business? And then having a look at the 17 goals. There will be something there that will help you to, you know, to drive your business through to your purpose.
Yeah, and I think sometimes if you look at the goals, it can feel quite overwhelming, but actually if you dig into them, there are targets associated with goals, and that kind of breaks them down and explains them, and that can help. And obviously I'm going to do a plug, but read Legacy and find out how other business owners are doing this. Talk to, you know, get involved in communities that are kind of aligned to it, and find out what other businesses are doing and how they talk about their contribution to the goals. I think, Colin, what's really nice with how you're bringing people together around support the goals is you can then go on and you can see their ratings and you can see their progress reports, but you can actually read their stories as well. And I think that storytelling is a really powerful tool just for creating that inspiration and that engagement.
Absolutely, thank you. And that's one bit we decided to make key, was that there was so many businesses out there who were already doing great things, and they decided to go and pay the living wage, or it could be something like ridiculously crazy, you know, and some massive idea. Doesn't doesn't matter what it was, but, you know, businesses large and small were already doing good things. And if we could find a way to go and share their story, that would be good. So we started off just by, you know, researching what there was out there, writing some short 300-word blogs, just to kind of bring it to life a little bit, and then showing which particular target of the SDGs that aligns against. So people would read it and go, that's pretty cool. Didn't know that company did that. What the heck are these SDGs? What's this target? Oh, that's great. Maybe we could do something about that as well. Yeah. So we're adding about 10 stories a week at the moment. I think we've got about 300 at the moment. And we have what we call, or what Rhiannon, our writer, calls her mum test on all of them, which is that all of them have got to be really non-technical. They've got to be something that her mum would go and enjoy. Just so it's nice and simple, because you're right. Yeah, I mean, there's some great stories that are out there already.
Yeah. Do you think leaning into your supply chain is another thing? So if you're a smaller business and you're working with bigger companies, that almost that reverse mentoring is one thing. So they might on the outside look like they've got it all together, but actually when you're a smaller business, you're more agile and you're closer to the ground, if you like, and you can get involved to help them. But, you know, that goes the other way around as well, is really looking at them, and if they are publishing this information, reach into them and say, you know, what do you expect of me as a supplier? What can I do? You know, find out from your customers, the people that that pay you, and the people that and your suppliers, the people that feed you, what's important to them, and how can they help you practically?
Yeah. Elle, what's been your experience as, you know, as seeing Kogo kind of come from New Zealand and go through that startup process there, and then come over here and actually embedding the SDGs yourself, and then obviously engaging businesses in that agenda as well?
So yeah, small businesses, just coming off the back of that conversation, it's interesting. A lot of them are doing so much more than they already realize with the goals. So they may approach us thinking they want to have one badge in cruelty-free, for example, but actually by the nature of being a small business, they're doing so much more. And in terms of further promoting that, Natalie, your point was really interesting about, you know, sharing knowledge. And that's something we really try and do at Kogo, to kind of further propel the SDGs. You know, talk about the fact that businesses that are listed on Kogo, it should be a community. We should be sharing knowledge, and actually the smaller businesses have a lot to give to the larger businesses, and vice versa, because it's all for the common goal and taking away that competition aspect as well. And just in terms of small businesses, I think it's also really important to stress that there are many challenges there that we need to be supporting for small businesses. In terms of sustainability, accreditations can be very expensive. So for example, organic certifications and so on can be a high cost for small businesses, or probably actually doing that, but the accreditation is however many thousand. And that's something that we're really conscious about at Kogo, that no matter how much we grow, we always keep a balance of having 50% small business independence and keeping their cost, their subscription to be on the app as low as possible. So yeah, that's us constantly continuing to evolve and making sure that there's protection there.
Yeah, I think that is really important, because like you said, it can be a barrier to entry. And it's that balance of ensuring that you know, these things are externally verified and there's not kind of greenwashing or purpose washing going on, but on the other hand, that actually is accessible to businesses of all sizes to be able to verify that they are operating under fair trade principles, or paying living wage, or that they are cruelty free, you know, whatever that certification might relate to inside their credentials.
Completely. And yeah, just to go back, sorry, to your original question, there was just so many amazing points going on that, you know, a lot of people don't really realize the SDGs in relation to their business. They're aware of them perhaps, but they don't realize in that context. And when we're going through our impact framework, talking about what badges, we obviously match it up with the SDGs. They're like, oh my goodness, you know, of course. And that's really interesting, that kind of education piece that is still there to be done. So yeah, hopefully, you know, this time next year we can be in a much, you know, different place in terms of that's just knowing the SDGs. There's still a lot of work there, we're finding, to be honest.
Yeah, I think part of that is this this sense that they are just policy, or they're for governments, or they sit at a higher level than the business community maybe, or that, you know, the business community is just about profit. But actually we're seeing this triple bottom line of people, planet, profit really kind of come to the forefront now, and actually kind of an evolution of what corporate social responsibility is and what it means. And it's not enough to write a check once a year anymore to a cause.
No.
You really need to embed it. Colin, we've got a question, I think it's for you, from Chris. He says, how readily are small businesses opening their doors to you compared with, say, the FTSE 100?
I spotted that question. Thank you, Chris. That's my favourite question. That's the one I really, really like. The simple answer to that one is much more readily, far, far more readily on that one. And just there's a bit of a kind of dichotomy between what FTSE 100s are saying and what's actually happening at the lower end. And I'm hoping there's nobody from a FTSE 100 on this call at the moment, because I'm going to be a little bit unpleasant about them here, maybe. The difficulty, I think, within FTSE 100s is a lot of them have kind of heads of sustainability. And I used to be one myself for many years, so I know exactly what it's like. And when you're in that, you're surrounded by policies and frameworks and ideas and everything like that. And when the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, they quickly made an acronym out of it, came along. To these large companies, that seems like yet another thing to go and do. So they go through this real tick box exercise of saying, we've done CDP, we've done ISO 14001, we've done FTSE for Good, all these other kind of acronyms, and they just treat it as one of those because they know they have to. And it really becomes a little bit more of a tick box exercise within them. And it's a long, long process, because within these companies, for them to go and start doing something serious, their planning cycles are massive. The company I used to work for, NTT, we had 285,000 employees. It was Japanese. It thought very long-term on things. So if you talk about introducing a new strategy, it might be 20, 30 years, quite literally, before you get it included in there, by which point the Earth's not in a great shape, to be honest with you. Contrasting that with, I'm going to use Sean, you as an example here. With Ethical Hour, was a small business here yourself. So we have a rating system of which businesses can put together, can publicly share their plans, commitments, actions, and progress towards the goals. We had a good chat about it. I gave you a little bit of advice on what you could go and do. I think it took you about 12 hours to go and make a few changes there, largely because you're already doing it anyway. It's accelerated your focus on this. You've done some great things around it anyway. But this is the kind of key thing with a small business, is you can take action really, really quickly. And you can get to speak to the people who are actually genuinely already passionate about this. Whereas within a FTSE 100, it definitely becomes more of a tick box exercise. So small companies, the issue we've got is the bulk of them haven't heard of it. They don't understand it. But once they do, they engage so quickly and really do great things.
Yeah, and that's a really good example, actually, Colin, of what you were saying as well, Elle, that you're actually doing it already. So, and I would say that we were already quite engaged in the Sustainable Development Agenda. We eat, sleep and breathe it at Ethical Hour. We're all about that. We work with businesses that are doing that. And all it was when you did our rating, and I was, again, an example of, well, how do I get the 4th star? Because I think we had 3, and I was like, how do I get number 4? But it was actually just in the way that we were communicating. So what we were putting on our website. And actually, I think where we didn't get that star originally was around communicating our targets. So I was talking a lot about our impact that we'd already had, and what we were doing and what we were improving, but I hadn't set any tangible targets. And I think sometimes as a small business owner, they're all in your head, and I kind of knew, what contribution I want to make, what I want to do, but actually I'd never sat down and said, well, feasibly, what are we going to achieve? And actually B1G1, who have pulled together the legacy project and have really led that, they make that very easy for small businesses, because when you join as a member, you get access to the platform, you get access to all the different causes. So they vet the charities, they vet the organizations, they link you up with them, you can make your impact. 100% of what you donate goes to that charity, because B1G1 actually cover the transaction costs. So again, that's a really important angle as a small business. One of the barriers can be that you're not sure which charities to partner with, you're not sure where your money's going or what impact you're really having. And then they help you report that back in relation to the goals that impact aligns to. And all it was for me was I just needed to I think I probably spent less than an hour to get that 4th star, because I just sat down and thought, right, okay, it's all in my head. I just need to pull it out of my head, communicate it, run it past my team, who are a nice small team, and we do everything on WhatsApp. So quick exchange of WhatsApp voice memos, there it is, put it on our website and done. So I think, as a small business, we have a big advantage in that we can be agile and we can be teaming up with these organizations and creating these collaborations and having a much bigger impact for the size that we are. Whereas the big corporations have complex supply chains and loads of moving parts that can be quite slow moving. But then, you know, there are other disadvantages in that the awareness maybe isn't there. You know, when you are a small business, time and sometimes money and things are always going to be kind of barriers to entry as well, like you touched on, Elle, with the accreditation. So what have you experienced? Natalie, I'm going to come to you first. What have you experienced as some of the biggest barriers or challenges to engaging with the Sustainable Development Goals at the level that you're at, either from your own business or from businesses that you've supported?
Oh, yeah, I think Colin mentioned the decision cycle, actually, the decision-making cycle is so elongated. So if you're looking at large sort of top 4 accountancy practices or banks, etc., you can talk to passionate change makers all you like, but the decision-making population, if you like, is widely dispersed. They could be all over the world. But the way I sort of look at it, and going back to B1G1, is about the immense power of the tiny and the small. And I don't think looking at going to 1 or 2 decision makers to create organizational change is the way forward. I think it's about lighting a touch paper, 1 person at a time, actually. And like I say, the buyers will drive change and talent will drive change as well. So if you look at it again, I keep harping on this, but it really is absolutely the way to differentiate yourself is to be a purpose-led business. Talent wants to advocate for a business who they really truly believe in. So I think by overcoming, like not even trying to address that as an objection is just you winning the hearts and minds of individuals, and this is, you know, then we become a collective.
Yeah, that's very true. Elle, what about you? Because you must see you play a really active part in this process with businesses and in this decision-making process when you're kind of onboarding them to your platform. So what are you seeing as some of the barriers and the obstacles along that? I think, you know, you've touched on some of them, but can you expand on some that you see in your experience?
Completely. So yeah, going back again to what Natalie and Colin have touched on, process with the bigger businesses is a really kind of huge challenge. Again, in terms of communicating, oh, we know we need to do this, but we're not quite there yet. You know, working with heads of sustainability, but all the process and loops that it needs to go through. And I was previously working in the FMCG sector, so I know how slow it is. So that's, I would say, one of our biggest challenges. But I think one of the main things that Kogo can do in kind of further propelling SDGs is empowering the consumer. I think consumers can be really kind of berated in these whole conversations about sustainability. You know, look at the way people are consuming at all these rates. But going back and rewinding that education piece there to start from the kind of bottom up, and we do that by showing what our users care about, to then further, you know, reiterate to our businesses that this, again, isn't a moment in time. This is happening, and this is what, you know, users want.
Yeah.
So yeah, continue to drive that is our main priority. But I would say, yeah, definitely as we keep going back to the slow process of large corporations and businesses who, you know, it's a real shame because we know a lot of them are actually doing a lot of great things and we want them to start communicating it. But this whole kind of we're not ready rhetoric is a real kind of everyday challenge for us.
Sure. And a question for you, being a marketing guru. We've all heard about the influencer marketing, and I feel a little bit like Elle, that your platform could be one of these types of influencer marketing, but in a lot more of a positive way than the Insta influencers, if you like. But the consumer really has, you know, have you seen the difference from, say, sort of 10 years ago, where it used to be push marketing and businesses would tell what we bought? And whereas now it's very much it's pull, and consumers are really, they have got the power. How do you feel the power balance is tipping this, and how can we use this to our advantage?
Al, do you want to take that one, or it's quite a big one?
Yeah, completely. So I actually, prior to Kogo, started working in sustainable fashion because I became frustrated, you know, similar to yourself, wanting to be more sustainable, but not knowing where to begin. And it was completely overwhelming. And I became so exhausted and bored of constant, you know, flash sales, buy. You go onto brands' Instagrams and it's just full of like, you know, clothing, and now you have the direct links and whatnot. And I think we're seeing a real shift in, you know, brands needing to be far more than their product and what they're shifting. You know, you can't just be bunging e-commerce images of nice models in your clothing. You have to be there to tell your wider story and what you're focusing on. And, you know, consumers want to buy into a brand. They don't necessarily just want that product and that moment in time or whatever it may be. And one of the most exciting things when I started purchasing more sustainable fashion items was that, you know, by nature, I was purchasing from really tiny brands who were doing everything, and was so grateful for you purchasing, and you really got that kind of amazing connection. And I think that is something that we really need, you know, back. And, you know, larger businesses still have the opportunity to do that, and their storytelling and almost kind of personifying that item of clothing that you're buying or whatever it may be is so much more. And I think there's some really great pieces to do there, and we really try and translate that to our marketing as well. So we could easily just push out all the amazing businesses who are doing great things that we're working with, but we try and really position ourselves, you know, as a kind of thought leader to educate and inspire. And as well, although essentially at the end of the day, we're an app that helps you buy from amazing, sustainable, ethical brands, we also don't want you to just kind of go crazy and consume. It's not about that. It's about the purchases that you make being the best possible option. So yeah, that was a very long-winded answer, but I hoped it helped.
Yeah.
My chapter in Legacy is called Shopping Ourselves to Extinction, and it comes from the place of the consumer, because I think, you know, the consumers do have a role to play, but we have for too long, we've seen it passed down the chain and said, well, you know, we're only making this stuff because consumers are buying it. I was at a talk a few months ago at a big sustainability conference where one of the heads of sustainability for one of the major coffee shop brands stood up and said, well, we're never going to get rid of disposable coffee cups completely because consumers want them and they demand them, so we have to produce them. But what we've seen is that, I don't know if you're familiar with Boston Tea Party, they're an independent coffee chain across the country. We've got one here in Worcester. They have completely eradicated them. So they've partnered with a brand like Keep Cup, I think it is Keep Cup they've partnered with. They do a cup rental scheme. So if you forget your reusable, you can rent one for the day and you can take it back. They sell them in store and they do not have disposable cups. And what happened was their profits took a massive dip, but they knew that was going to happen. They build this into their business plan. They've been very open and very transparent, and they've told that story about, we've done this because the planet is more important, the sustainability is more important, and actually if you take them away, consumers will stop using them. And I actually tweeted the coffee shop brand during his talk in anger a little bit, because it did rile me up, but I said, you know, if you all got together on this, if you followed goal number 17, which is collaboration, and the big kind of 3 or 4 leaders in the takeaway coffee space that we see on our high street, if they all got together, the thing is they're scared to go first because they know their profits are going to dip. So no one's going to go because no one wants to go first. But actually, if they all said we're going to go at the same time and we're going to collaborate for the greater good, then their profits won't dip as much because they'll all do it. So actually, when you're faced with the decision as the consumer on the high street of do I go there or there, it's not going to be, oh, I'll go there because they've got takeaway cups, because no one has takeaway cups anymore. So I think the consumers at the bottom of this are getting sick of the responsibility being on us all the time. And I hear it all the time, people saying, well, why, you know, I'm doing everything I can to shop plastic free, but then I go to the supermarket and everything is in plastic. So what can I do? And actually, it's time now for consumers to push back. And what I talked about in my chapter was that kind of weird journey of someone working in marketing, of suddenly realizing that actually what I do for a living is sell. That's not great for the planet.
Completely.
Change. But I think marketers and advertising can actually be selling these ideas now, and almost reverse marketing. So marketing back to the businesses that we're working with to say, look, this is how you can understand what the consumers want. This is how you can understand their mindset around this. This is how you can support them. And I actually think my chapter comes under goal 12, which is responsible consumption and production, because I felt that as a marketer, that was really well aligned to where I need to be. But actually, I think goal 17 is sometimes the underrated one of this collaboration. And actually, there could be some really powerful collaborations at a much bigger level that would accelerate this change. We just need to kind of light that touch paper. I think somebody said that earlier, you know, lighting that touch paper and getting that going. But the question is, you know, how we do that and how we get big corporations that are moving at a slow pace to be that forward thinking. And I think, Elle, you made a really good point that actually as small businesses, you've already got that connection with your customer and with your supply chain, and actually the big businesses are starting to look to the small businesses to see how are they doing this, how are they engaging people, and how can we replicate that. So I think this collaboration is starting. I think the next year is going to be kind of really crucial for that, but I'm curious to hear if anyone's got thoughts about how we can kind of accelerate that process.
Oh, that's a big question on the spot, isn't it?
There is no bigger question than that. How do we get how do we achieve the SDGs? My word. No, for me, I mean, yeah, we could say smash capitalism
in 9 minutes
like that, but that's not going to happen, is it? So, I think everything that's been suggested today is key, and I think in particular that kind of pushing of the brands to get away from that mantra of consumers' demand, which is possibly one of my most hated phrases ever. I have never yet seen a shopper stamping the feet in front of a head office saying, go and give me a non-recyclable cup. It does not happen.
Yes, I want plastic bags and I want them now. Yeah,
absolutely. All people want to go and do is go into a shop and buy things. Or if they go into a coffee shop, they want a coffee. They don't demand a cup or anything like that in the slightest. It's just a vessel to drink out of. So the ownership on all of this is actually with the companies themselves to go and drive that innovation. And I really like the point about the fact that they're sat there looking at their suppliers now and trying to go for and trying to look at innovation from all these smaller companies, because that is absolutely key. Most of the big companies themselves don't do the manufacturing. So most of them actually rely on their suppliers to go and come up with these things. And their suppliers are usually much, much smaller companies, often passionate, often have some great ideas, often wish they could go and do some of these, but feel like they can't because their customers, in inverted commas, demand it. So when they have an opportunity for a customer, for one of their big customers, turn around to them and say, what can we do to go and produce a product that is more environmentally friendly, more socially responsible? They love this.
Yeah.
Example is I work with a company, HH Global, who are a marketing company. They provide marketing execution, they call it, for some of the world's largest brands. So they do brochures and banners and things like that. And over the past few years, they've kind of really changed what they do. And most of the way they've done this is by talking to these small suppliers and going, what cool ideas have you got? You know, how do we actually change the way we've done things? We've produced banners, we've produced pop-ups, we've produced brochures in the same way for donkey's years. So is there a better way we can do things using more environmentally friendly products? And the ideas that have come up are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
So we've managed to go and work out that over the past year, just by looking at some of these innovations, they've supported 4 SDGs in particular. They've saved nearly 32,000 trees in the process. They've managed to go and almost entirely move away from PVC with a lot of their clients. There's some good things, and most of it is just around innovation, talking their supply chain, and just having that conversation in the first place, being brave.
Totally. You mentioned the I word a couple of times there. It's my favorite word, innovation. And, 71%, this is a McKinsey stat, 71% of businesses are facing or either on the brink or in the throes of disruption. So innovation has to be at the heart of everything they do. And actually businesses with fewer resources and tend to think more expansively about how they can be more creative, actually. So actually taking taking a view of actually, let's look at this from a point of view of a constraints perspective, you're going to be much more innovative, actually, instead of thinking about that's all there. So it just will drive innovation, thinking less about, those resources are there forever.
I think that brings us nicely full circle there, Natalie, because at the beginning you were saying about the financial and the economic opportunities that achieving the goals is going to create, and really even for businesses where profit is their driver. I say this a lot, but actually for the businesses that really don't care about the environment, they don't care about sustainability, you know, Colin, you've given us examples there of some that really do and are really making changes and seeing the benefits. We know there's corporations out there that just don't care, but they will care when it is the most profitable option. And I think the things that I've picked up from this whole conversation are that really the key to this whole agenda is that innovation piece and that collaboration piece. And you know, from big to small, from consumer to business, across the whole spectrum of it. But that's what businesses have always existed to do. They've always existed to innovate. They've always existed to achieve growth. I think it's just a shift in what we think growth to mean, and actually growth for the planet and growth for people, not just growth for the bank balance. And they've always existed to collaborate, because actually a sales transaction is still a collaboration with your customer. It's solving some sort of problem for them, because people buy what they need. So you're solving something that they need and you're collaborating with them. So I think it's just rethinking what we mean by some of these terms and what context we apply that to.
Absolutely. Well said. And I think that collaboration piece brings diversity into your business as well. And as I say, that is the engine of innovation. So by working together, you get a really beautiful mix of ideas that can create something really wonderful for your business, but also leaves the planet better than when we started, which is what we need to do.
And just actually jumping in, I hope you don't mind on that point. Shawnee, you were saying about the businesses, examples I've given of businesses that care. Don't get me wrong, the people in those that care, but the driver behind doing this was how they differentiate themselves in the market. This was the fact that, you know, the example I gave, they worked out the fact that the big brands they work with, this is an increasing focus for them. So how do they align themselves to their client's agenda and stand out in a busy marketplace? So there was some personal motivation behind it, but the bulk of it was about making hard cash.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a really good point, because I think there's still a bit of a negative connotation around ethical, sustainable products and practices, that it is, you know, I often get asked, well, aren't you a charity? Because I talk about how we give back, and we're a giving back first organisation, we're purpose first, you know, use all these kind of buzzwords. People say, aren't you just running a charity or not for profit? Well, no, we're for profit, but we're for purpose as well. And I think it's breaking down some of those stereotypes about what caring and what sustainability and ethical. But I think we've made an amazingly strong business case here for why businesses of all sizes should be getting involved. I'm curious to know, as we come to a close, what advice you would give to the business owners that are listening who want to start supporting the Sustainable Development Goals in some way. Elle, I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay. What advice would you share?
Completely. And you guys have actually completely changed my focus. One of my kind of main goals prior to this conversation was responsible production and consumption, same as yourself. But actually, when you talk about collaboration, of course, and I think that actually may be my new favorite now. And I think that's key in terms of businesses getting involved. You know, don't be afraid to reach out and ask questions and put your hands up and say, you know, this is how it is at the moment. What can I do? It's not going to happen overnight. And actually, again, going back to the fact that you're probably doing a lot more than you realize. There are so many resources out there. That's the great thing about sustainability and ethics. It's one of the most open and welcoming communities. So I'd say start with that. Don't be afraid to reach out to people and attend loads of events and educate yourself. It's an evolving journey. It's not going to happen overnight.
Brilliant advice. Thank you, Elle. And I love that we've kind of changed your perspective on the goal as well. They all do tie together so nicely. And it's really important, and it is important to think about which ones kind of are core to your own work as well. So thank you for sharing that. Colin, what would your advice be to businesses to be getting involved and to kind of encourage them?
Ooh, okay. So I'm going to come back to what we gave earlier on, which is about Simon Sinek. So that idea of Simon Sinek's tip of starting with why, this whole golden circle and having your purpose at the center, that is absolutely key. And that needs to be both your personal purpose and your business purpose. Because if your heart's not engaged in something, your head's really not going to go and get behind it in the slightest. So that bit's going to be key. But the only other bit I would say is just share, 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 and share. You know, so the more you talk about it, the biggest issue we have with the Sustainable Development Goals is, last survey done, only 24% of people in the UK had ever actually heard of them. And more than half of those didn't actually know what they were. You know, and that compares to about 42% across the rest of Europe and over 80% in Scandinavia. So do talk about what you do. There's a great quote from George Bernard Shaw. which was the greatest issue with communications, is the fact that it is the illusion that it ever happened in the first place. So I think so many people think about these things and assume they talked about it, but they haven't. Yeah. So, you know, back to your example, Sean, you know, if things are in your head, get them down, tell people, will admire you for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that brings it back to the collaboration as well, because actually we collaborated on that. I reached out to you and said, you know, I'd love to find out more about your work, and I'd love to kind of run Ethical Hour through this process and see where we stand. And actually it was you as an outsider looking into my business saying, well, this is in your head, but it's not actually out there in the world. So I think that's where that collaboration is really key, because it's that diversity, it's that different perspective that Natalie was talking about earlier. I think really, really important. Thanks, Colin. Natalie, you're looking very thoughtful. I can't wait to hear.
Oh, that I'm doing no. Wow, I think, yeah, well, find your why, obviously, and that embracing the power of collective intelligence to, I guess, multiply your resources and multiply your innovation impact as well. But I think that for me, it's looking at the SDGs as a source of innovation, actually. This is some, you know, innovation has to be something which is business as usual for businesses now. It's looking at them as, you know, almost their go-to inspiration, actually. How can we, as a business, continually reinvent and reinvigorate ourselves? And how can we do that in a way, as I say, which leaves the planet better than when we started? And also, just in terms of equality and inclusion, also knowing, again, bringing that back to what businesses really, really care about, let's be honest, is actually diversity and inclusion also is a huge engine of innovation as well. So, you know, those three things, kind of collective intelligence, diversity, inclusion, and innovation really go together for me. So it's just reach into them to make a better business.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And I'm curious to know if we've got any more questions from the audience. So do leave questions if there's anything you'd like to ask any of our panelists in particular, or just in general. Pop them into the chat and let us know. We've got a few minutes to kind of talk about that and to expand this conversation out. It's fascinating stuff. I could talk all day to all of you.
It really is.
Such good perspectives, and I think for me this really embodies what the Legacy Project is about, and why I felt I wanted to be involved in it. And when I talked to Paul from B1G1 about the idea of legacy, I think the thing that really struck me is a rethink of what legacy actually means, and the reason why this is such a powerful title for the whole project, and of course the book. And the way that he kind of articulated that was that a legacy, you know, traditionally you might think that's what you're going to leave behind when you're gone, and you know, we might think about it in terms of wealth, but actually for me it's that shift, and it embodies that change of what we need to think about growth and what we need to think about profit, and all of these things, they need to change. They need to incorporate people, they need to incorporate the planet. And the way Paul described it was, a legacy is what you're living now. It's the impact that you're having in the here and now, and the difference that you're making. And we can all have a legacy. We can all tap into our purpose and bring that to our work and kind of live our legacy. And I think inside the book you hear from people that really are doing that and are really clear on that purpose and that journey. But what I love about it is that they share such personal insights into how they got there, because I remember, you know, way back when I was at the beginning of that journey, how overwhelming it felt and how isolating in a way. And I know, Elle, you'll probably resonate with this. As a marketer, it does make you question the career that you've had and the work that you've done, and going through that shift. And for me, reading Legacy when it arrived and I dug straight in and actually seeing it all come together, it was just that really warm moment of actually that community coming together and that collaboration starting. And this, you know, Natalie was saying earlier, sometimes if you release a book, that's kind of the end of a long period of hard work and off it goes into the world and you're done. Actually, this is the starting point for Legacy. This project isn't about these 52 changemakers. It's about the wider impact and the wider legacy everybody can have. So I'm curious to know from our panelists, and it's quite a big question, but what would you like your legacy to be? So Nat, I'm going to come to you first because you are one of the changemakers. Done some reflection.
For me is, again, I keep saying this is one of my one, is that we leave the planet better than we found it. But from a personal point of view, is that my children and grandchildren can take it for granted that equality will be their right.
Yeah, really powerful. Really powerful. Thanks, Matt. Colin, big question.
That's a huge question. You keep throwing these ones at us. Wow. How do you solve the SDGs and what's going to be your legacy? To me, to be quite honest with you, I mean, I've got 2 children. My daughter graduated from university last Thursday.
Amazing.
So,
congratulations to
yeah,
her.
thank you. So 5 years, she's now finally a vet, which is great news. I would just like, and this sounds so cliche, but it's so true, to be honest with you, that they actually grow up in a world that's a little bit fairer, that is a little bit kind of better on the resources we have, how to go and live in harmony with what we've got a little bit more. And I'm a big fan of technology, you know, but I think sometimes actually people just getting back in contact with the natural world is going to be key. So I do hope that the next generation, my kids and their kids after them as well, hopefully can understand how we can try and get a little bit better balance in everything we're doing. So just having a legacy for my kids will be fine.
Beautiful.
I love that. And there's a chapter in here by Paul and Jeannie that's all about technology and about automation. And I heard them speak at one of Natalie's events, and actually talking about how automation is going to help us achieve the SDGs, because, you know, there's a lot of fear around automation at the moment and about how it's going to take jobs and things, but actually it's going to do a lot of the manual work that then frees up our time to be in nature and to be living our purpose and to be fulfilling our legacy. And actually, if we do it right, it can be a really powerful tool in this journey. And I know, Nat, you're working a lot on that with them and in your own work as well. And I think that it's really important that this isn't about necessarily going backwards and rejecting all the developments we've had. This is about going forwards with everything that we've built so far in a way that is sustainable and regenerative for nature and for people. Really important. Elle, last but not least, what is your legacy going to be?
Huge question for a Tuesday. And it's interesting because, you know, when we talked about, I used to think about legacy, I used to really think about, you know, my career, you know, what impact I wanted to have, where did I want to go? And now I really think about legacy in terms of a 360-degree approach, you know, in terms of my day-to-day interactions with my family, my communities, and relating back to, you know, the SDGs and how those can really be incorporated as a framework, not just for business, but how you approach life. So yeah, that's my kind of main focus for legacy. And again, you know, I'm not yet a parent, but touching on what everybody else says, that one day when I eventually am, I hope that, you know, it's a given and not something that we have to be questioning. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's a bit of everything that we've said, but it's I love business. I love the creativity of business. I love the creativity of marketing. I love the psychology of it, and I love that innovation. And for me, it is our whole ethos at Ethical Hour is about creating a world where every business is a force for good. So every business is tapped into their potential, and it's making that happen. And then that has the knock-on effect of, you know, regenerating nature, not using up all our resources and doing all of that stuff. So I think it's really interesting to hear other people's, because when you look at the goals and how they all interlink, we're all talking about the same stuff. We all share the same vision. We've just got different areas of focus. And actually that's where that collaboration piece becomes so powerful, because if you can then link up and say, okay, well, my piece is this, your piece is this, and your piece is this, how do we put those pieces together? That's what's going to create that better world. And that is what legacy is all about. So it's been brilliant. I'm going to share the link for people to go and get their copy if they haven't already. I'm just going to say hello to Pam from chapter 9. Pam is here, one of our authors.
Pam? Oh, yeah, she's my co-author in chapter 9.
Co-author in chapter 9, Inside Legacy. So, and again, really brilliant story to share. So there's so many in there. There's so much to dig into. It really, really is worth kind of digging in and reading all of that. And I'm not just saying that because I'm biased and I've written part of it. I just love it.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit biased, but I love everybody's stories. And I love the ethos of it. So I just thank you so much to all of you, brilliant panelists, for coming on and sharing all of these amazing insights. Very quickly, tell us where we can connect with you further online for people that have been watching and want to find out more about what you do. Elle, do you want to start?
Yes, so Instagram, feel free to head over to the Kogo platform. You can also email me. We're really open, so we encourage any feedback on the app, or if you just want to have a conversation, we're always here. And I'm al@kogo.co, and I'll put that in the chat. But yeah, please do reach out. We really encourage that and would love to hear from you.
Amazing. Thank you, Elle. Thank you so much for being part of today. It's been brilliant. And let us know when Kogo rolls out nationally. We will be downloading it.
Of course, we cannot wait. I'll be sure to keep you all updated. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Colin, where can people find out more about your work?
Easy. Thank you. So if they go to www.supportthegoals.org, you can read lots of fun stories about what businesses are doing on the goals, and you can click on the businesses page and see some interesting ratings. Probably even more interesting, they can go and join up by clicking on the join button that's on there. So anybody can go and share their story for free. So if you've got a business that's doing cool things, and by the fact you're here, you probably have, then just click on there, just select the story level membership, and you can join for free. If you're a member of Ethical Hour, which I presume you probably are as well, by the fact that you're joining this one, you're also entitled to corporate membership for free. So that way you can get some recommendations on how to communicate your support for the goals. You can get a rating, get a certificate, get listed on the webpage. So supportthegoals.org and click on join to go and sign up.
Brilliant. Thank you, Colin. And Natalie, where can we connect with you?
So we are on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, I think. And we are at The Hero Works. So TheHeroWorks. I'm also on LinkedIn myself, so it's Nat at The Hero Works, and we're at www.theheroworks. And we're also working with Chester University to design a new master's in AI automation and entrepreneurship, which is aimed mostly at mid-career women. So this is something else that, if you want to email me at nat@theheroworks.com, I would love to engage with you about what we're doing there. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nat. And that sounds brilliant. Like really, really good initiative as well. And yeah, connects with all of the goals as well. Shannon's just saying, couldn't catch all the info for contact. Could you share in the chat?
Yeah.
If all our panelists could just drop into the chat and share your links again, just for everybody in there, that would be great. And if you are watching and you're not yet a member of Ethical Hour, we bring changemakers together for events like this. We have really, really interesting discussions, and we have training every single month inside our membership community. We're really focusing on helping change makers to become thought leaders for their cause. And I think, Elle, you mentioned the thought leadership piece earlier about how that's going to make change happen. That really has a knock-on effect, because if you're seen as the thought leader, you're getting in the press, you're sitting on panels, you're being seen as the expert in your space, you're being seen as somebody who is creating change, then that has a knock-on effect on your income and your impact as well. So it's how I've grown Ethical Hour to where it's at today. It's how the change makers in Legacy have grown their businesses, and it's a really, really important piece for anyone who's running an impact business of any shape or size. It's just £20 a month to join our community, and there are perks as well. So Colin mentioned there, you get free corporate membership and support the goals. We're bringing in other perks, we're bringing in trusted suppliers, and we have a map of where all our members are in the world as well, so you can connect with them. So do come over and join us. I'll pop the link in the chat here for you to find out more. Obviously, you can find me on all the social media at Ethical Hour, and I'm Sian at ethicalhour.co.uk as well. I'm going to try and type that as I talk, which is a challenge. So do feel free to reach out to me as well. Thank you everybody who's tuned in and joined us, and for our amazing panelists as well. And we'd love to hear from you about your legacy in action. So I really hope this is just the catalyst and the start of this conversation going further.
Sorry, just one question. Will they be able to get the recording of this anywhere?
Yes.
You can share it, yeah.
As long as tech has been our friend, it has gone out live on Facebook. I have been checking in, and it does look like it has. There is the recording as well, so that will go onto our YouTube channel. I'll send an email to everyone who has registered as an attendee, because I know some people couldn't tune in live and will want to catch the replay. And if the recording quality has been good enough, I'm going to put it on our podcast as well. So we're going to be spreading the word everywhere. You know what we're like, we're on all the
Yes.
but yes, the recording will be available, and for you panelists as well if you want to use that. So all that's left for me to say is please go and read Legacy, and let us know what you think. And just thank you so much for your time, and good luck putting the goals into action. I'm excited to collaborate with everyone going forward.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Looking forward to hearing about you.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.